course, in the wrong
Where you been, bro?
spot. Me?
In this big break between season 5 and season 6, I've been here the whole time and just hanging with all the other misfits.
Yeah, moving, launching a global app, and trying to dodge sickness and
Sorry, bro.
spreading the love of Jesus.
Moving to the
Apparently.
penthouse, launching a global app, making cheddar, got no time for podcasts, got no time for misfits. This is how we roll in Portland.
That's not what I said.
I'm paraphrasing. Misfits, welcome to season 6. Let's go. Roll the credits. From Sydney, Australia, all the way to Portland, USA, two misfits hang out after class to riff on the B-sides of professional life. These are your professional misfits. All the way from Sydney, Australia, I am your host, Christopher Sellers.
I'm from Portland, Oregon. I'm Broedy Ipox.
And for season 6, we are your professional misfits, where we riff on the B-sides of life, of professional life, on all of life. And this is episode 61B, season 6. It's actually episode 71, and we can't count because we did 20 episodes, I think, for season 2, if you recall. There you go.
Touché.
So there you go, misfits. There you go. But we'll, just for continuity's sake, let's call it 62. And if you ever go back and watch season 2, you'll have a nice little surprise.
Which even that is like not even accurate because we have all the specials and like random shit.
True.
Done
We have bonus content. Speaking of bonus content, shout out to this season's sponsor, back-to-back seasons. It's brought to you by IGU. It's an older game with a new twist where a modern innovation and nostalgia come together to bring you Tag for today. Broedy informs me that you can now download on Google Play and Apple Store, and currently at how many downloads and users, my man? Because you're launching this, baby.
Oh, Christ. I'm not going to give a number because I don't have it accurate after this weekend, but we're in the thousands and we're doing great. We're doing great.
And stupid amount of million views pre-launch.
Yeah, so close to 15 million views pre-launch. Yep. Yeah.
It's not bad.
So no, it's
not bad.
No, it's not horrible.
Thanks for showing up for the podcast, man. That's real humble of you. So, Misfits, today's episode is: are happy people successful? And I'm going to be clear. Like, is it not are successful people happy? It's like, are happy people those that are content, that are secure, that are pleased with their lives? Do they have the capacity to achieve greatness? And this, because we all know of the tortured genius, and it's a cliche for a reason. So I'm sort of asking the question, well, is it possible to be happy first and achieve any modicum of success? And I don't know, but B, I'm going to throw it over to you. So, like, do you know any happy and successful people?
Yeah.
Or define success or whatever.
Yeah, I think I do. And let's just say living above the average means.
Okay.
Seem to be happy and stable in both their relationships and lifestyle. And strive for more. And yeah, I do know a couple people, but if you asked me if that was the regular, no, I mean, absolutely not. You either have, and this is just my experience. You either have incredibly happy and content people that really on the point of ambition tend to fall short, or almost the polar opposite, where you have wildly ambitious people that are just continuously succeeding in areas, but they're not happy. They're haunted by something, is what it feels like. You know what I mean? I hear that commonly, especially now talking to even more people that have that kind of level of success. It's like they joke about it. It's like, what are you haunted by? It's like, stop.
Yeah.
Like, it's fucking weird. Like, okay, I guess we're all fucking unhappy. But yeah, that's so it not the normal, but I do know a couple, and I wouldn't say either that those like cases, those people are like extremes. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like that they're like so high performing or so different or so out of the box, or they're most part just normal people. They just kind of seem to have it balanced. You know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, I'm going to continuously achieve and set goals and strive for things, but I'm also really content and happy in my relationships with my kids and my spouse, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I'll, to be fair with you, I'll level here. That's outside in. You know what I mean? I don't know for sure.
Yeah. That's very true. It's a very good point.
And granted, one of them's one of my best friends, but at the same time, you know, I, again, as much as I know this guy, and I would say that he's a fucking stellar dude, and what you see is what you get. You never know if he's fucking at home beating the kids or whatever.
Yeah. Or got like a sneaky little addiction, or
right,
whatever.
Anything. Yeah, a horrible, weird crutch or a fucking nasty kink or whatever the hell it is, you know. But no, it's it seems like it's rare. It's rare.
Yeah, I would say I agree, but I feel like I'd be buying into the stereotype. But before I get,
do you feel like that's the stereotype? Do you feel like?
Well, okay, so precisely this. Before I had I did a little bit of research before we set this up, and I was like, geniuses or successful people, happiness. And of course, you get thrown all the lists of like, here's all these geniuses that had mental disorders, you know, or in hindsight, in hindsight had just, you know, had these conditions, right? And so that's the norm, and that's the narrative, isn't it? It's the crazy eccentric genius. So it makes me wonder, like, was Da Vinci ever happy or satisfied? And again, it's chicken before the egg. Like, can you be happy and satisfied first, not achieve all the things, stand on top of the mountain, then examine the cost and have your like come to God moment and then find peace? Because that's a narrative we all know as well. So it's specifically, I'm specifically questioning whether happy, well-adjusted humans have the capacity to achieve exceptionalism. And at a snapshot,
and you're not just talking, just real quick for clarity, you're not just talking like slightly above average. We're talking about achieving things, right?
So like in the realms of like Abe Lincoln, Sylvia Plath, Nina Simone, you know, like David Bowie, like legendary, iconic, like, you know, Musk, Jobs who famously suffered from OCD and a whole bunch of other things, you know, and was an absolute prick to work with. So you could argue that no, he wasn't happy and died. Like his final words were along those lines of like, actually, savor the moment.
Oh, I mean, and it was like everything. It wasn't even just that he was even personally fucking just in excruciating pain. It was that like he looked back at everything, and because of that pain that he was in, he was like, I don't even want my kids using my technology. I don't even, you know, there was so much up there that was not good. And just like you said, he had, I mean, fuck. And we're talking today on a damn, I know we're both using Apple laptops like that. It's incredible to think, you know, the actual impact and scale of that achievement. But again, like you're talking about, in retrospect, it killed the man. You know what I mean? It killed the man. So.
And that's true. And so Misfits, just to pull you sort of behind the curtain for a little bit, is what we had a different sort of topic lined up for this conversation. Like I'd written book number 2 and I was planning like a whole bunch of, I'd written book number 2 and completed it. I was set to release of November this year. And then I decided to delay on the advice of some of the industry readers and like move it to like February, March next year, 2025, and release some online courses or materials and stuff to go along with the book. So that's sort of the project on the side. And we were sort of going to talk about that. And then it hit me this morning a little bit. It's like, well, I'm the sort of kid that's constantly driven by next project, next thing, like, and if I'm not doing something, like, what's the next step, and like, how do we market? Who do I bring in? Like, it's always next thing, next thing, next thing, next thing. And I've got a bit of an understanding of where that comes from. And the question was sort of posed to me in the mirror. It's like, well, like, are you ever going to be happy? And then it's like, well, which would come first? Like, if there wasn't a little splinter of doubt or insecurity or ambition, sure, but also like not being good enough or having to prove a point, like all those little things that I know you all identify with at home. Without that, would you ever like consistently push yourself to achieve, to climb the next mountain, to climb the next mountain, to climb the next mountain until there are no mountains on the planet? And that's, you know, so that's where it comes from.
I do. I do. Can I say something real quick, Misfits?
Yeah.
I also want to say that he's paraphrasing like philosophically where this came from for him. In a literal sense, this man has nothing to work on right now. He has nothing to work on professionally. So he messages me and goes, "Yeah, I think I went a little overboard." And he's completely arranged his entire house. He's getting rid of shit.
Hang on. I'll hold up the camera so everyone can see. I threw out my bed frame and moved everything around and threw out all the clutter under my bed, and then I've got like shit on the walls, and it's all very zen. It's all very minimalist. Thanks for outing me. Yes.
Yeah. You can't stop. So I like, I know what you're talking about too, that like, again, that kind of haunting that we were saying, but I do want to in this episode touch on the fact that I don't think that for everyone I don't think it's so integrated and attached to a dark trauma, because I think there are people like you that like move, you know what I mean? I don't know how to put it any other way. Like, that's just how I would describe you if someone asks,
I agree. Moves. Look, here's so for context as well, I did a quick top 10. I did a quick top 10 of like who's achieved all the things, but historically has not been or has had a few issues. So here we go. Abraham Lincoln was documented to have episodes of severe melancholy and even suicidal ideation, which was something that I didn't know. Yeah.
Interesting.
Right? Van Gogh, obviously, cut his ear off. Bipolar and manic depression. Sylvia Plath obviously committed suicide. Virginia Woolf, bipolar. Beethoven was probably bipolar and suffered from depression and suicidal ideation. Also, if any of these people live till mature old age, these symptoms exacerbate as well. Mm-hmm. So there might be seeds there in the beginning, but they tend to exacerbate towards the end. Edvard Munch, panic attacks, the guy who painted Scream. So there's a real interesting journal entry how he was walking along the fjord at night and then suffered like a debilitating panic attack, and then just ended up sitting like on the shore, kind of staring into the fjord. And so then you get a little bit of insight into the silent horror that is the Scream. Like that was sort of his world, Who else we got? Michelangelo potentially had autism, looking back on it. Charles Darwin, here's one that I didn't know, had severe agoraphobia. So, would shut himself in for weeks, months at a time, like debilitating agoraphobia. And it wasn't diagnosed at the time, but all the notes were like, whatever this symptom is, it's severe. So the guy that brought us the theory of evolution suffered from debilitating,
a pretty large chunk of this fucking planet.
Like, what? Debilitating agoraphobia. Isaac Newton suffered from most likely bipolar, autism, and even schizophrenia later in life. And the one that we sort of can build a parallel to and build an episode around is one of my favorites, Nina Simone. And she's later diagnosed with bipolar, but also specifically in terms of can happiness achieve greatness, and maybe not. But what you could argue made Nina Simone who she was after studying a little bit at the Juilliard School of Music, she then auditioned for the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia and was rejected. And up until the day she died, she believed it was like, because I'm a young black girl, you know. And so to go to Juilliard and then to get rejected for a scholarship for another university jaded her in a way where she still continued to do what she did, but she had always that sour bitterness of disappointment. And then if you look at her relationships and if you look at her lifestyle in that era, like she typically didn't choose the greatest men, typically lived that jazz, soul, devil's music lifestyle and bought into that whole era. So it would be reasonable to say she wasn't a happy human, but she was fucking gifted, incredibly skilled, a once in a generation voice, and her music is still iconic. And so this is where it kind of comes back to the heart of this episode. Like, would Nina Simone have even been Nina Simone had she not been rejected by, you know, the Curtis Institute of Philadelphia? And here's the other thing. Like, sure, you get rejected and you take it well, and you just go, oh well, guess music's not for me, and then you move on to become a carpenter. Like a happy adjusted person would do that.
I mean, that's a little different. That's yes, but it's a little different when you're coming from fucking Juilliard. Like, I mean, holy shit. That, yeah, I don't even.
You know, people do it all the time. Like, come on, I studied acting college full time, and the whole time, it's like, you know, going into it, going through it, and then going out of it. It was always like, when are you getting a real job? So, if I was sane, I would have gone, yeah, shit, you're right. You know, I'm going to be a restaurant manager.
But that had to come from anybody outside of the industry. There was nobody inside the industry that was treating you like that, right?
No, but that's all echo chambers have that problem. You know, all echo chambers think they're the greatest. You know, so, you know, if everyone is telling you the same thing, sometimes it's got to be you. But so that's a conversation for another time. But this is the thing. Like, if you don't have that little, I don't know, bitterness, darkness, sourness to work with, to work against, to fight and win, but then keep fighting because it doesn't fucking stop.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the parable that you don't experience happiness without pain, right? Like, and I do agree with that in the sense that you don't I don't think you're fully aware of each side of the spectrum without the other. But I also don't believe that you don't experience one without the other. I don't think they're I don't think they're that entangled. I think it's interesting. I asked Joyce, and it's funny that this is where we're at, and her question to us was, can true happiness coexist with relentless ambition? So she didn't necessarily even take it. Yeah, she didn't even necessarily take it in terms of success. She went straight for, I think, where we're starting to go down, where it's like, I'd argue too that rain cloud, that little devil on your shoulder, that thing too, like you said, that motivating factor, whatever it is, 9 times out of 10 for people is a negative thing. It's not a sunshine or a rainbow. You know what I mean? It's much easier to relate there than it is to, you know, and it's funny because as I'm fleshing this out, I'm like, okay, so does that mean happiness is rarer than tragedy? And I just don't want to believe that, like, because I don't want to be a cynic, but
no, but there's also that genetic thing that we're more sensitive. Like, we're wired to be more sensitive to pain and to be risk averse in that sense, rather than see potential, happiness, joy, blah blah.
An interesting layer to that too is we're actually even biologically wired to remember pain more than we are to remember anything associated with dopamine, serotonin, or oxytocin, because those are generally pretty quickly processed chemicals and emotions and experiences and settings. cortisol and stress, those tend to be longer lasting. Even when you look at adrenaline, so you might have the peak experience of adrenaline and the physical symptoms and all that. But if you really pay attention, that shit's still with you about 4 or 5 hours after.
Well, I know this is a complete tangent, but that very neatly explains addiction. Because most addictive behaviors are immediate bursts of dopamine and serotonin, but of course they wear off really quickly. So you've got to keep seeking it to, and then once you come off it, you have the nasty hangover and all that sort of shit. And then the you're still depressed or sad or heartbroken or whatever.
Yep, because you're trying to remember and sustain that same level of baseline that's so easy to do with the inverse, that I'm sad, right? Like, it's easy to stay here. It's like, what?
And that's actually a really common trait with everyone on that list and everyone else in the periphery that I researched, like Tennessee Williams, Jesus. Hemingway specifically, like, holy fuck, like, read about his life and the time he stepped off a plane. He had to have minders getting on a plane because he would just go, oh, fuck it, and want to run into the propeller because he wanted to end his life so badly. But his publishers had to send wherever. Anyway, that's a random thing. So they have all these, Nina Simone, again, like alcohol and substance abuse, like most of them in that list did. And it's a coping mechanism and a strategy, so even though you might not, and that's the thing, again, we see that in high achievers, like in any sort of industry, there's some often a dependency or substance abuse as, like they say, an outlet, but it's sort of like an excuse or a band-aid solution to whatever else is going on. But getting back to, like, Joyce's specific question, like, is happiness possible with relentless ambition? I'll let you know personally. I'll let you know 5 or 10 years from now. But I think this goes back to the point that you made in the beginning where I said, do you know any happy and successful people? Is like, if relentless ambition often requires a singular focus. So I'm going to take this one thing all the way to the end, whatever that thing happens to be. And then with that, then comes, you have to compromise on a lot of other things. So you'll have to compromise on, like, time with your partner because I'm doing the job, I'm practicing the craft, I'm traveling or doing whatever it is that, the pursuit requires me to do. You sacrifice time with your kids, time with your family, you sacrifice fucking hobbies or anything that would otherwise bring you joy. So it's by definition, it seems like they're in opposition. Like, relentless ambition is an uncompromising beast, and happiness is something else. Right. So I would argue there's not much overlap on the Venn diagram there.
Yeah, no. I mean, listen, you say it, I was trying to come up with a counterpoint. And I mean, there's parts of me that say there are, and one of them being that I think people can get caught up in the ambition. I've seen a couple people where the cycle is addicting to them and they enjoy the chase and they enjoy the challenge, and I don't know how they fucking do it. They just ask for more and they want more, and they're up at 5 o'clock and their coffee's done, and I know those people, but it's like it like you're saying, at the same time, like I don't, God, I'm gonna sound like a douche. I just don't. I don't see any of these people changing the world, though, either. Like I see them being the highest achiever around them, absolutely, bar none. Fuck, fields of in front of all the other players. But in terms of the next echelon of athlete, right? Like, no, I don't. I don't know any of them. You know what I mean? And it's like you're talking about, where I'm like, okay, let's bring relentless back into the conversation. That's, like you said, it to me, it's a solitary focus. That was perfect. Like that is what I have one war. and everything that I'm training and preparing
Yeah.
and doing, and it's for this one moment. And realistically, that's not enjoyable. I mean, truly, if anybody's ever really done that, it doesn't matter how passionate you are about the thing.
Yeah, I mean, unless
that's why they call it the grind,
right? But unless you're on the autistic spectrum where you're great with single focus, or you're OCD, where you're like, great, I can sit here and I can lock into doing one thing and pursuing it until my body shuts down and I need to sleep. And there's obviously reasons why a few on the list and a lot of the tech bros fall into that category. They fall into the OCD category. They fall into the bipolar, possibly autistic, because social skills aren't required to work with machines to code. It's not required. Have you seen? But coming back for a little bit, have you seen the movie Whiplash?
Who's in it?
Good, a fucking excellent question.
Put him on the spot.
Now I can't remember, but basically it's a young kid who's at a US university, and he's a drummer in a prestige orchestra, jazz troupe, and there's a guy. I'm not going to take the time to Google it because it's going to take too much time.
I want to say it's Miles Teller. Is this a newer? Okay. Yes, I have seen it. It came out a couple.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Right. Mm-hmm. So it came out a couple of years ago, and then the guy who's the conductor and the maestro like fucking drives this guy to get the best out of him. But the reason I'm bringing this up is there's a scene in the very beginning, because like Miles has a girlfriend. You know what I mean? Like he's a drummer, but he's got a girlfriend, and because he's in his early 20s. And then he sits his girlfriend down in the cafe and he's like, look, we got to break up. And she's, why? And then he maps out his journey and career progression of like, this is what it's going to be. Like, I'm going to be in this band, and then I'm going to go on to this thing. And then I'm going to be rehearsing, and then I'm going to be performing, and then we're touring, and and all this sort of shit. And there's just not going to be like any time for you, or you're going to come resent me or whatever. And just sort of lays it out with this focus. And she looks at him like he's fucking mental.
Yep.
And she's like, so you're breaking up with me, like we're good, but you're breaking up with me now because you think you're going to get there. And he's like, yeah, and there's not going to be any time for you. Like,
yep yeah, it's funny too. I love that movie, and that's one of the things though it was interesting that you bring up that list of the 10, right? I wonder two things. I wonder if the depression and some of the mental struggles that they had actually come from the times that they didn't have a focus. Just like you pointed out, sometimes on that end of the spectrum, the focus is easy. I'm in the flow state. This is where I'm at, and you can't touch me. And then having to live normal life and process things that don't feel like that. And you know what I mean? I wonder truly because again too, and I'm not even joking. I was in my head. I was like, this motherfucking sounds like Chris. This motherfucking sounds like if he hadn't have found a fucking setup that he liked in his apartment, he probably would have burned it fucking down, like. So
it's a true story.
So there's that. And then number 2, the thing about these ambitious and kind of high performing people is also within that, where it's like we're talking about, if that flow state is your natural state, your happy state, everything like that, and everything else is the shit that sucks, is, like you said, is that the only way then to be a high performer, is to be so tortured by average life that the only focus that I can have is in a creative facet, or in the ability to solve problems, or
the career, like whatever it is,
yeah, whatever it is.
You stay past 5, you do the overtime, you come in early,
because fuck going home. Absolutely not.
Right. Yeah, what's there?
Like,
You know?
Right.
Yeah,
And it's kind of like you know, the Miles thing is what brought it up, because that scene too. The thing that I get from him in that as well. Third point here too is I wonder then if that level of success or kind of like accolade requires some level of delusion, right? Like, because
yeah.
again, you can call that confidence. I love you, Misfits. That's fine. That it is a level of confidence, a delusional level of confidence, because again, you don't have any predicting indicators other than your skill level that this is where you're going to land. You know what I mean? Like, all of these things have an intense amount of variables, and you just go, no, this is what's going to happen. That's delusional as fuck. But I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying, in normal conceptual logical thinking, that's delusional. You're fucking delusional, bro.
And it's true. Like the list of 10, they're each cherry picked because they succeeded. You know, there's thousands. There's thousands of others in the same field. There's thousands of singers who were equally tortured who never made it.
Yep.
You know, there's all
I would argue even equally as talented as well. You know what I mean?
That's fair. And the thing with that delusion as well is that over time it will compound. Because like if you're a young Steve Jobs and then you finally get your break, you're like, fucking awesome, I'm the man. And then next product comes out and that's a hit and you're like, fucking awesome, I'm the man. And so this God complex compounds over time because the universe proves you right. You know, and sometimes it is actual like genius and creativity and solid work. Right. Don't forget that Jobs was kicked out of his own company, you know, and so, because he was fucking intolerable to work with and all these sorts of things. So you're right. There is a level of delusion. There is a level of delusion. The only sane part about it is whether you start to, I assume, the sane part about it is that like you're aware that you're being delusional. It's one thing to walk on stage, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. And
yes.
I think that's the difference. Is just keeping one foot tethered to the earth to go, look, there's thousands of others, and you know, man, we've talked about this a bit, with the fintech and everything. So we're sitting here kind of waiting for everyone else to catch up. And this is exactly how it feels. Like you've got like a world changing idea, which sounds ridiculous to say out loud, but no one else sees it yet, apparently. And I talk about it a handful of times just to let people know what's going on. And then there's actually more going on than a podcast. But until it's recognized, until it's financed, until other people get on board, you know, you're no one. You know, I may as well be scruffy Steve Jobs back working at Atari and fasting. You know, it's sort of a funny thing. But somewhere in your last sort of comment, there was sort of the question that was raised. Well, like, can't you do both? Can't you? And I believe that you can, or like idealistically believe that I can. That you can have the goals and the vision and want to summit the highest mountain, and somewhere on that journey you can hold hands with someone and say, do you want to come with me, because I'm going up this mountain, that's what I'm doing, like do you want to come with me, you know? Perfect.
Two things. Joyce has said this, and this is from a compilation of stuff, Misfits, so sue me if I don't have a fucking source. Her compilation comes down to research indicates that strong social relationships and romantic relationships are the most consistent predicator of a happy life. Okay. Now, because we're talking about two things, right? Okay. One thing that I brought into this myself is a quote from Franklin Roosevelt. Ambition is enthusiasm with a purpose. Okay. Now, to me, that implies happiness is attached to that ambition, because enthusiasm is related to joy and excitement.
You can't be unhappily enthusiastic.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it would beg the question that there are some wildly successful people like Franklin Roosevelt, do your research, people, that say that ambition and enthusiasm can and do
Can coexist.
correlate, which is just interesting. So, to our 2 points, one, does it take having someone beside you, whether that's romantically or it says romantically
Or
or
business
just social
partnership
relation,
or
right?
good
Yep.
friends. Yeah.
And really, are we all wrong? And the flip of this with the most successful and the happiest people are that they have figured out how to balance both ends of the spectrum.
I'd like to think so. I'd like to think so. And I think that they're the more unseen, unheard of cases because it's not as dramatic and exciting.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's we also we seem to love a tragic figure more than
Course.
we love Superman.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like we would. That's
we're
completely different.
This is going to be a dick thing to say, but we're all more underdogs than we are Superman.
Well, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna drop this in here just because I'm a nerd. There was a really on Superman specifically. There was someone, I can't remember who it was. There was someone who broke down. It's like, do you realize that they had to make Superman an alien? Because if you look at him, he's the best of everything. Like he has the most power. He's invulnerable. He'll live forever. He's immortal. All these sort of things. But he's also altruistic, gracious, humble. Wise, compassionate. Like he is, the living comic immortal Jesus figure, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And the guy that was talking about him was like, and you had to make him an alien because if he was a human born of this world, the public and the audience reading the comic would fucking hate him. They'd resent the fuck out of him because no one's that perfect. How dare you? And like most characters are a mirror of ourselves. So like no one's that perfect. No one's that humble. If they had all that power, if they got, that's human nature. So the only way this character would work, and Thor's a similar example of like, it had to be an outworlder who came here, to bring these noble principles to guide the light of humanity. That's why, so that's why it had to be an alien. And it's a throwback to, all other religions and those sorts of figures. Like there had to be godly, otherworldly figures that were not of mortal men. There were ideals to aspire to. They weren't of us. That's where did that come from? It came from morality and can you be happy and successful and all those sorts of things. But so we're more inclined. Like there's a reason people identify with Batman so much, and they're still convinced that Batman would be able to beat him, because he's got this tragic backstory and he's tortured and he holds on to this torture, billions and billions of dollars and absolutely no coping skills. So, so couldn't afford therapy in all of those years.
Or a fucking trip, my guy. Like, Jesus Christ. Take a vacation, dude. Get out of Gotham, you fucking idiot.
So that's right. So my point was like we're more drawn to those tragic stories. There's a reason why I could search like geniuses, like unhappy geniuses or whatever, and get like dozens and dozens and dozens of articles and links to mental health and all this sort of shit. But if you were to search, happy, satisfied, like geniuses, it's it'll be harder to find.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting that you say that. Yeah, so I know that too, and I think we all deep down have that, almost natural instinct that it's like you do want to pick the loser, like, and again, that's not to say that everybody's a loser. That's not what I meant by that statement. It's just that, again, I think we all are so internally critical that, don't tell me you haven't pinned yourself against the wall at one point or another.
There's that. I'm sure that's part of it. I'm sure there's our own like base human insecurities. of why we won't accept that someone is just happy and content, you know. But it's also it doesn't make for a very good story, and that's something to consider as well. That's why I always thought like Superman in particular is a fucking terrible character. But like for in any story, the protagonist, the hero, you and me, needs conflict and an enemy, something to work against in order to achieve the thing they want to achieve, whether it's respect, money, fame, the girl, whatever. Right? So you know, it's all of that. So for the
Misfits, a perfect analogy to that in character reference is fucking I don't know if you know it, but Goku in anime. I mean, literally the concept of Goku's power is that if there isn't if there's nothing to power against, though, he would never increase in power. Like he would be capped where he's at. I don't disagree with it. I don't, you know what I mean? Like I hate to say that, but again, just like you were talking about with Superman, it wasn't that he came down and he was on level playing field with us and then he became strong and then he became patient and then he was already given these characteristics, right? Like
it's
that's
like,
the thing.
What did you overcome to earn this?
Right.
You know? And it's kind of why, you know, things like, I mean, we're detouring on comic book characters, but
you can't get me started on that.
No, but now imagine your hero is like, he's born into a happy family. The parents don't divorce. His siblings all love him. He does okay at school. She does okay at school. She goes on to university. She meets a nice boy. She gets married. She has a couple of kids. The career goes well. The partner is doting and loving. And then, you know, fame and then fortune follows because you're a nice person and good things happen to good people. Like, it's just, it may be real life. And there may be cases of that out there. And there may be, like you described, people who are satisfied with, this is a success for me. Like healthy children, I'm happy. Loving partner, I'm happy. Like the job, it's there. It's okay, I'm happy. But it's
why isn't that an exciting fight?
Right.
In Misfits, Misfits that don't know, I'm sitting here with 5 children. Just like Chris said, that is something for me where I'm like, yes, that's goddamn. And sometimes it is a fight. You know what I mean? It's not an easy journey. It's not a fucking just go and it's done kind of thing. It's a work in progress. 9 times out of 10 too, it's not enjoyable. But again, like you're saying, it's not something that now that we're even in a good place that I would go, that's one of my accolades.
Yeah.
I slayed that dragon. You know,
I survived.
What does that dragon look like? A fucking broccoli, fucking piece of broccoli.
Yeah, right. So we're not so drawn to that. As it doesn't make good social media. You get roasted on social media. Like it's every time a rich dude's kid comes out and says, "Here's how I built my business." Everyone is like, "Fuck off! Your dad handed it to you." You know, so we dismiss it immediately. This not just entitlement, but the fact that it just doesn't make it for a good story. You know.
So do you think then that we've maybe even specifically referencing the list from earlier? Do you think that maybe some of us do that then to ourselves?
In what respect?
So maybe not in the sense that you look at like OCD or bipolar and a lot of those things, and those are can be environmentally induced, they can be genetically inherited, all those things. But at the same time, within those, right, same, just like we're talking about. So you take any person from that list and someone goes, "Hey bro, you've got OCD, you got bipolar, your shit's fucked up, your brain's not working right." And they go, "Okay." And they go for a fucking walk that day instead of sitting in the office and solving the fucking theory of relativity. And that's kind of what I mean, where it's just like, that makes that really, though, to me, while I'm sitting here, that makes content, the feeling of content, feel like the enemy. You know what I mean? Like it.
Yeah, and who's to judge? Because there's times. Look, okay, to bring it back to real life, Brody's story about me throwing everything out of my apartment is true, but it came directly off the back of a solid 2-day depression.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I talked to Broedy about, actually. It was like, so Wednesday was bad, Thursday was fucking bleak, and hoping I woke up better on the Friday, and I did. And then I went for my swim, and then went to the calf, and I was trying to sort out the fuck what was going on with me. And then I came back, and I just felt like I feel like a clean out. And it's spring here in Sydney, so I'm like, fuck it. Everything under my bed, thrown out or got moved or whatever else. I decided, like, I don't like my bed frame. I want a new bed frame. So I tossed it, and and then that went like half of my storage because I had a whole bunch of shit under the bed. Like, it's fine. I'll figure it out. And then like moved everything around, cleaned everything else out. I ordered another bed frame, all this sort of shit. Broedy got in touch because we were supposed to record, and Broedy bailed again. But I said it's actually fine because I've just spent the day doing all this shit and I'm kind of wiped. And you're like, why'd you throw your bed out? Is it like, are you okay? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, actually, I've just had 2 days of like solid depression. I don't know if it's this. I don't know if it's a psychological, mental, all these sorts of things. I don't know. Maybe, probably representative of cleaning house, fresh start, all that sort of shit. Broedy made the joke that, like, I think it's because you don't have anything to do and you need a project, so you'll just make up a project. I'm like, yeah, you might be right. You might be right. Now, again, 2 days of solid depression, and then on day 3, when I was sort of feeling better, I could have just gone, sweet, moved on.
Mm-hmm. Right. And look, I don't want to derail where you're going with this, but that's kind of what I was saying. That's what I mean. And in my perspective too, if you look at, again, what we've classified in this conversation as a high achiever.
Yeah.
They don't have that awareness and in what in my mind is a resource to continuously build that capacity, right? And like, again, just like you had made the argument before, I agree. You need you need a little bit of darkness. It's a little flavor. It's a little zest. And again, we're all drawn and related to that. But 2, I think a ton of those figures on that list, had they had something that had made them happier, you cannot argue to me that even on a biological and scientific sense, they would have performed better.
Yeah. Look, I think it's, again, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but it's like okay, I'll speak from my personal experience. Understanding I know I have depression and how it hits me and why it hits me. Well, I don't know why it hits me, but how it hits me and then how I cope with it is, look, understanding at times I will need rest, and there's nothing you can do, Chris. You can't work if you want to. So fucking buy comfy food, curl up, and be done with the day. And there is times where I can be functional, and then I want to make the most of that sort of functional time. And the same with, past trauma and disappointments and all those other sort of life things that affect high achievers and drives them. I think there's a lot of value and a lot of sanity in understanding like what those drivers are, where they come from, and sort of like knowing how to switch it on and off. Like, there's times when you can lean into it. There's times when you can lean into the fuck you mentality. I'm going to show you all. That's a really powerful driver. At times,
it is.
You really need to be able to turn that off. You know, it's great in short bursts. If you live there, and I've done it for some time, you're fucking angry, you're fucking resentful, you are burnt out because you've always got something to prove to everyone all of the time, and it feels like everyone's an enemy and you've always got to fight.
Tired. Yeah.
Right. Because you feel like everyone's an enemy and you've always got to fight. You've always got a point to prove. So developing the awareness to dial that way down. And whatever that is for you, Misfits, no doubt you've gone through disappointments and then gone, oh, fuck you, I'm going to show you, you know, great. Hold on to that. Really, really useful. Not everyone is worthy of your spite.
Mm-hmm,
You know, it's yeah, and this it probably sounds a bit controversial, a bit weird to mention, because it's normally when people talk about failure, well, people on LinkedIn fucking talk about failure. They're like, it's cool, just fail, just move on, just all this sort of shit. Like, no, failure and failure, betrayal, disappointment, all those things, they're like really heavily, they will heavily emotionally impact you, especially if it's happened young, because you don't always have the skills or the support group around you.
And if you dismiss the impact, I promise you, I've watched it catch up to people later. It's like you cannot run from it.
Right, you dismiss the impact. You say, oh, like, young boys now are soft while you've got a drinking problem, while you chain smoke, while you cheat on your wife, while you're a coke addict. But
and
like,
you die of cancer at 50.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're on your third marriage. Your kids don't speak to you, but like, boys today are soft. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, you're sweet. But that's the point. Like, it need not consume you, but it is valuable in small doses, right? And there you go. That's my moral for all of it, while I'm trying to negotiate it for myself. You know what I mean? While I'm sitting here, like, I'm well aware the reason I write, produce all my own shit, control all my own projects, businesses, X, Y, and Z, all these other things, is because I constantly feel, well, number one, I like a stage. And I constantly feel I've got something to prove, because I constantly feel like I've got something to prove. And I'm unsure if that's ever going to go away. And I've spoken with other high achieving men, women, all those sorts of things. And there's the honest group who kind of say, that doesn't really go away. You know, you kind of have to get comfortable with this discomfort. And then there's the type who say, oh, no, you just have to get over it and deal with it and realize life isn't like this. While at the same time, they're the most stressed motherfuckers I know. Oh, you know what I mean?
Well, look, no, what I'll say in reference to my point is, don't dismiss the impact, is they are the ones that have programmed dismissing the impact into their psyche. So just like you're talking about, they're so fucking stretched thin. They're so stressed out, but because they can do it like this and tell everybody they're really happy, they think that they're really happy. It's like, dude, what?
Sort of normalize their dysfunction. It's
right, bro. You know, that's not healthy either. It's not healthy.
And again, that's always easy to see from the outside. You know,
yes, and so, I'm sure that for that exact instance, there's things in that context that I do that people would be like, bro, stop. We know you're fucking full of shit. It's just, it's in my point of view, it's when you bring it into that sense that, just like you're talking about, fuck, dude, look at it as like the control of it and the honesty of it is a fucking superpower. That's the goal. Like you talked about, if I could literally identify my motivating function, like that one thing in there, whether it was strategy, strength, challenge, whatever, if I could tickle that whenever I wanted to, it'd be fucking unstoppable. I know I would. And maybe that's my delusion, but
well, I know we're almost getting to the end, but now, like, one little insight's hit me is, like, I was going to try and wrap up and say, look, is it possible to be happy and successful? My short answer was going to say yes, but it's unlikely that it makes a good story. You know what I mean? So you won't be on the front page of X, Y, and Z, and your socials won't pop off because of reasons. But I think I'll qualify, and I'll also add this as a disclaimer. It's like, I don't think you'll, without some sort of trauma or tragedy or disjoint, let's say, I don't think you'll ever achieve anything exceptional. Now, my reasoning is precisely this. if you're happy and you're content and all those sort of things and you become success, that's great, because the world has operated in the way that you believed it should and it's rewarded you. There is something uniquely brilliant about someone that goes through life and then the world doesn't operate the way that it's expected to. And then you cope, you adapt and adjust, and you realize that this is one of the realities of life, is that it won't always go according to plan. You won't always get the things that you want. It may not always work out. And so you have to learn to achieve in spite of that. And I think that's particularly when it comes to artists, like when you're forced to see the world, you're forced to see the world a different way. And that's the difference, because now you see two different worlds, the way the world should have been and the way the world is for you, right? And you hold that view for the rest of your life. Nina Simone, like, I've just come from Juilliard, I should get accepted here. No, you won't. Great. So her life, like, I should have been accepted Juilliard, and here's the life that I'm living. So how, right? So
yeah.
that's my disclaimer. So I don't think you'll, like, true exceptionalism comes from, I think, that disjoint.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't, because I want just one episode where I am that guy that's like fighting for positivity, but like, no.
You're fighting for positivity. We're here. The whole point is we show up, we discuss everything, we solve nothing. So it's okay. Fight us in the comments, Misfits. Fight us in the comments, yes, so Broedy can be positive.
Yes, please. Yes. Okay. Yeah, no, it's this is a great place to wrap up, because I'm with you. I'm with you. It's just, it is a really hard argument, and if there is someone in the comments genuinely, I would love to hear it. I would love to hear an educated, articulated point of view that says you don't need that. You don't need it, and you can get there and be that same person you guys are talking about without all the bad shit. I just don't see it. I just don't see it as a possibility. Like we've said throughout the entire episode, for a multitude of reasons. I don't think you have anything to challenge yourself against. I don't think you have anything to expand against. It's not even just the challenge. It's again, the reference point that you were talking about just a second ago. It's like, I can't even acknowledge that I'm not the best I can be if there's not something kind of taking me down a notch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
What I would have already assumed. I would have already assumed and been in that, again, a different level of delusion that I think is the unhealthy version. That it's like, I am the best I can be, and there's nothing better around me. And I'm not. I can't even get better. I'm just fucking perfect. That's gross. That made me feel weird saying that shit. But I think you get where I'm going. And yeah, sorry, Misfits, you're gonna have to go through some shit if you want to be interesting.
Yeah, but it makes you cool. It makes you a misfit. That's why you're here, right?
Yeah.
If you were Joe and Jane Vanilla, you wouldn't be listening.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
All right, so that wraps up first episode of season 6.
Yes.
Do you know what's coming up next, Broedy?
Nope. Go ahead and drink.
Take a drink.
Just
take a drink, Misfits. If you're new here, every time Broedy doesn't know which episode's coming up next, you take a drink. So you need to do a supercut of that, of the last 5. I think there's like 100 drinks you need to take. Next episode is, we're discussing online relationships, Misfits. Do they work? Do you have a really hot girlfriend online?
This is one where I wish for any one of our socials, which, by the way, thank you, Misfits. I need to put that out into the universe. Thank you, Misfits. The stuff that we've been putting on YouTube and TikTok, you guys have just been eating up. Really appreciate that. Yeah, that's just wonderful to average, above 600 views on each piece of content, to get some genuine engagement and content, or a comment from you guys on that content, is just huge. It's just big. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for that. Things are coming, the content's coming, and the supercut probably would be quite a few fucking clips of you guys having a drink. I don't want to do that to you, so don't get don't get too excited because you guys would be fucked up.
Be a drinking game. Online relationships, Broedy, do they work? Do you have any sneak peeks of what's coming on for next week?
I don't. I just wish with the Misfits that are engaging, we had a hotline because I want one of them to call in and be like, I have the hottest fucking
She's
best
so hot.
girlfriend. She's so kind, and she sends
Ukraine
me
and
whatever it is. Please tell us about it because I'm not sure that's real.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. So that's what we're talking about next week, Misfits. Like personal, professional, online relationships. How do you manage them? What have been like for you? Have they changed things? Because they're relatively recent, only 10, 20 years in the making. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about next week. In the meantime, yeah, you can find us on all the socials. You can go to our website, which is promisfitspodcast.com. I should know. I made it. promisfitspodcast.com. Get all the links to all the socials. You can find us on YouTube. You can listen to us on Spotify. You can follow along everywhere. Broedy manages all of that. It's not my section. In the meantime, I've been Chris.
I've been Broedy.
And you stay classy for season 6, Misfits. We'll see you on the next one.